The rain had a way of making the house feel smaller, as if the walls leaned in closer each time thunder rolled across the sky. Elena Hart sat curled on the edge of the velvet sofa, her knees drawn up to her chest, staring at the pill bottle on the glass table. Her name was printed in neat black letters across the white label, but the rest of it, dosage, instructions, the doctor's name, looked like something written for a stranger. She could not remember ever meeting Dr. Edwin Clark, though Marcus insisted she had once, years ago, after what he called one of her episodes. He had reminded her so often of her fragility that she almost believed it. He told her she was prone to breakdowns, that she needed careful handling, that without him she would collapse into madness. He said it gently at times, his hand brushing her hair from her face, and cruelly at others, his voice sharp as glass. Over time, the words settled like dust inside her lungs, and Elena began to choke on them silently, too tired to fight. The pills had become a routine, part of the rhythm of their marriage. Morning coffee, one white capsule, evening tea, a second dose. "They keep you steady," Marcus would say, slipping them into her hand the way a husband might offer sweets. She rarely questioned it, not after the first time she tried to stop and spent 2 days shaking, her skin crawling as if ants moved beneath it. Marcus had smiled then, faintly, as if her weakness proved his point. "You see, darling, you do need me." But tonight, the pill bottle mocked her. She held it to the light, turning it slowly. The name of the pharmacy was one across town she had never been to. She whispered the doctor's name aloud, hoping it might spark a memory. Nothing came. From the study she heard Marcus's voice, low, measured, the tone he used when closing a deal. She rose carefully, every movement practiced and quiet, padding barefoot across the marble floor until she reached the doorway. The wood was thick, but Marcus never closed it completely, as though daring her to listen, to remind her that she could hear but not act. "Yes," he said, his voice threaded with satisfaction. "I'll have her signature on the renewal forms by the end of the week. No, she doesn't remember you, and that's the beauty of it. She thinks she's already met you." A pause, then a laugh, soft and triumphant. "Finalizing the papers for commitment should be simple. The evaluations paint her as unstable, and the medication records back it up. Another month, maybe 2, and she'll be safely tucked away." Elena's heart slammed against her ribs. Commitment, safely tucked away. She pressed her palm against the wall, steadying herself, fighting the sudden dizziness that rose like a tide. For years she had felt herself fading, as though her life were a dream she couldn't quite wake from, but never once had she imagined Marcus plotting to erase her entirely. The study door creaked and she pulled back, retreating into shadow. Marcus emerged, phone still in hand, his polished shoes tapping against the floor. He didn't see her, not really. To Marcus, she had long ago stopped being a woman. She was a possession, a fading portrait he could hang or discard at will. As he walked past, Elena's breath caught in her throat. The words she had overheard pressed against her chest like a scream she dared not release. Her entire world tilted, the edges sharp with betrayal. For the first time in years, a thought cut through the fog Marcus had built around her. She wasn't sick. She was being poisoned. And if she didn't find a way out, the walls would close forever. The night carried a silence too heavy to ignore. Elena stood by the window, her breath fogging the glass as she watched the rain smear the city lights into blurred streaks of gold and red. Marcus was still in his study, his voice muffled by distance, but every syllable she had overheard earlier echoed in her skull like a curse. Commitment, papers, safely tucked away. The words would not leave her alone. They clung to her skin like invisible chains. Her reflection in the glass startled her. Pale, hollow-eyed, lips pressed together as if stitched shut. She barely recognized herself anymore. She remembered once being radiant, her hair thick and shining, her laughter filling rooms. That girl was gone, drained away by years of whispered poison. Marcus had stolen her freedom in pieces, each pill another brick in the prison he built around her. She turned toward the bedroom. On the dresser sat a suitcase, half-packed. At first glance it looked ordinary, as though prepared for a business trip. But inside were not her clothes, not her belongings, but Marcus's. Crisp shirts, expensive ties, leather shoes. The suitcase was not for her. It was for him and the mistress whose perfume lingered faintly on his jackets. A suitcase for departure, not for travel with her, but for escape from her. Elena's stomach tightened. He had planned everything. She would be gone to some institution, silenced behind locked doors, while he walked freely with her inheritance in his pocket and another woman on his arm. She pressed her hand to her mouth, stifling the sob that threatened to rise. Crying would only give her away. Lightning split the sky, and in the brief flare of light, she saw the pill bottle on the nightstand. The white capsules rattled inside when she picked it up. She thought of the fog that always followed, the weakness in her limbs, the way her thoughts scattered after each dose. She thought of the laughter in Marcus's voice when he told the doctor she didn't remember ever meeting him. Her hand shook, but instead of swallowing the pill, she tipped the bottle upside down, spilling the capsules into the sink. She turned on the water, watching them dissolve into nothing. For the first time in years, she refused. Her pulse quickened. The house seemed to breathe around her, shadows stretching, floors creaking like conspirators. Marcus's footsteps echoed from the study. She had little time. She slipped into her closet, pulling out an old coat she hadn't worn in years, something plain, something he wouldn't miss. From the back of the drawer, she found the locket her mother had given her before she died. She had hidden it there after Marcus once told her jewelry made her look childish. She closed her fingers around it now, the metal warm against her palm, and felt a spark of strength. She crept down the hallway, her bare feet silent against the rug. Every sound felt amplified, the ticking of the grandfather clock, the distant hum of the refrigerator, the pounding of her own heart. She reached the back door and fumbled with the lock. For a moment she thought it was stuck, that the house itself was conspiring to keep her trapped. But then it gave way. Cold rain lashed her face as the night air rushed in. Behind her, Marcus's voice called out, sharp and commanding, as if he had sensed her absence. Elena didn't wait. She bolted into the storm, her coat whipping around her, her breath tearing through her throat. The city stretched ahead, wet streets shining under flickering lamps. She didn't know where she was going. She only knew she had to keep moving. Her lungs burned, her legs ached, but fear pushed her forward. Somewhere in the distance, a black car rolled slowly down the street, its headlights sweeping across the rain-slick pavement. She ducked into Owen Alley, pressing herself against the cold bricks, listening as the engine idled, waiting, watching. Marcus's men. He had planned for this too. The alley was narrow, choked with shadows and dripping fire escapes, but it offered a path. Elena forced herself onward, her hair plastered to her face, her shoes soaked through. Every step felt like defiance. Every heartbeat was louder than the storm. She did not look back. The night was vast and merciless, but for the first time in years, it belonged to her. She had escaped the house, escaped the poisoned years, escaped the man who had tried to erase her. She had no map, no allies, no plan, but she had her will. And that, she realized with a trembling breath, was more dangerous to Marcus than any pill he had ever forced into her hand. The rain had eased by dawn, but the city was still soaked, streets glistening with puddles that mirrored broken fragments of the sky. Elena had walked for hours, her body trembling from exhaustion, her mind burning with the echo of Marcus's voice. Every passing car made her flinch, every stranger's glance felt like it lingered too long. She wrapped her coat tighter around herself, though the cold came from within more than the weather. She reached a part of the city she didn't recognize, where polished glass towers rose above old brownstones, and doormen in uniform swept rainwater from marble steps. She stopped at a small cafe tucked between two high buildings, the smell of strong coffee wrapping around her like a lifeline. Inside, warmth pressed against her damp skin. She chose a corner seat where she could watch the door, her fingers shaking as she stirred sugar into her cup. She hadn't spoken to anyone since leaving the house, hadn't dared. Marcus had a way of making people believe his version of things. He would already be spreading his lies, telling neighbors she was unstable, perhaps already filing the commitment papers. By now, there might even be police looking for her, carrying Marcus's story instead of the truth. As she sat in the cafe, staring at her untouched drink, a voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. Smooth, calm, but carrying the kind of authority that made people listen. "You look like someone who hasn't slept in days." She looked up quickly. A man stood across from her table, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a simple black coat that couldn't hide the air of wealth about him. His hair was dark, streaked faintly with silver at the temples, and his eyes, sharp, piercing gray, studied her with a quiet intensity. "I'm fine," Elena said quickly, too quickly. The lie trembled in her voice. He raised an eyebrow, not buying it. "You're soaked, you're trembling, and your coffee hasn't been touched. That doesn't look fine. I didn't ask for company." "No," he admitted, "but sometimes it finds us anyway." He slid into the seat across from her, uninvited but not unwelcome, as if the space itself had made room for him. "My name is Adrian Blackwood," he said simply. The name carried weight, though Elena didn't recognize it yet. "And you are?" For a moment she considered lying, giving him a false name, but the truth slipped out in a whisper. "Elena?" He studied her for a moment longer, his gaze not unkind but sharp enough to see through her. She shifted uncomfortably, afraid of what he might find. "Whatever you're running from," Adrian said softly, "it hasn't beaten you yet. You're still here." Her chest tightened. No one had spoken to her like that in years, not with recognition, not with belief. She wanted to break apart under it, to confess everything, but fear sealed her lips. If she told him, he might call Marcus. Or worse, Marcus might already know him. The bell above the cafe door chimed. Elena froze. Two men entered, dressed in suits too sharp for this small place. Their eyes swept the room, then one of them pulled out a phone. Her heart stopped. Marcus's men, Adrian, noticed. His hand moved slightly, a calm gesture toward her trembling fingers. "Don't look at them," he murmured. "Look at me." She forced her gaze to stay on him. "They're here for me," she whispered. "Then it's a good thing you're not alone anymore," Adrian replied. He stood, draping his coat across her shoulders, as if shielding her from more than cold. His voice was steady, almost casual, but his eyes flashed with a promise she didn't yet understand. "Come with me, Elena. Now." Something in his tone silenced her doubt. She rose on unsteady legs, the weight of the locket in her pocket pressing like a reminder of courage. The suited men turned as she moved, their eyes narrowing, but Adrian stepped between them and her, his presence commanding enough to make them hesitate. Outside, the city roared to life, cabs splashing through puddles, horns blaring, people rushing. Adrian's hand found her arm, guiding her through the chaos with effortless certainty. Elena's pulse raced, fear and hope colliding inside her chest. She didn't know who Adrian Blackwood truly was, but in that moment she knew one thing with startling clarity. For the first time since she had overheard Marcus's plan, she wasn't just running away, she was being led somewhere Marcus couldn't follow so easily. The car that waited at the curb was nothing like the taxis or sedans lined up along the street. Its sleek black frame gleamed even under the gray morning light, a quiet signal of wealth that didn't need to announce itself with noise. Adrian opened the door without hesitation and guided Elena inside, his hand steady against her trembling back. The interior smelled faintly of leather and cedar, the seats soft, the windows tinted so dark the outside world vanished the moment the door shut. For the first time since she had fled Marcus's house, Elena felt hidden, protected. But that sensation came with new fear because safety in the hands of a stranger was another kind of risk. She sat rigid, her wet coat heavy on her shoulders, her fingers tightening around the locket in her pocket like it was a lifeline. Adrian slid into the seat beside her, his expression unreadable in the dim light. The driver didn't speak, didn't even glance back, only eased the car into the traffic with smooth precision. The city began to blur past, the noise fading to a low hum, as though she had crossed into another world. "You're shaking," Adrian said quietly. "I've been running all night," Elena replied, her voice cracking. "I don't even know where I am anymore." "You're with me," he said, his tone calm but carrying an unshakable certainty, as though those words alone were supposed to anchor her. Elena studied him in silence. He wasn't like Marcus, who performed charm like an actor reciting lines. Adrian's presence was quieter but heavier, as though he didn't need approval, didn't need masks. Yet the question burned in her chest. Why was he helping her? "What do you want from me?" she asked finally. Adrian's gaze flickered toward her, his eyes gray and sharp, catching the faint light. "Nothing," he said. "At least, not in the way you've been used to men wanting things. I saw someone drowning and I pulled her out. That's all." His words settled uneasily inside her. She wanted to believe him, but trust had been poisoned long ago. Before she could respond, the car slowed, turning through tall iron gates that creaked open as if recognizing their master. Elena's breath caught. Beyond the gates stretched a long driveway lined with lanterns and trees whose branches arched like guardians. At the end stood a mansion, its stone walls weathered with time but glowing with quiet power. It wasn't gaudy or excessive like Marcus's showpiece penthouse. This place radiated something older, deeper, as if built on foundations that couldn't be shaken. The car stopped at the steps. Adrian stepped out first, then at his hand. She hesitated, then placed her trembling fingers in his. His grip was steady, warm, grounding her when the ground itself felt unstable. Inside, the mansion was nothing like she expected. Yes, there was wealth, crystal chandeliers, Persian rugs, art that whispered of history, but there was also silence, an emptiness that spoke of a man who lived alone despite the power surrounding him. The walls felt both safe and haunted. "This is your house?" she whispered. "My father built it," Adrian replied. "I inherited it when he passed. But I don't let many people in. Consider yourself the exception." Elena stopped in the middle of the marble foyer, her wet shoes leaving faint prints behind her. Exception. The word cut through her like a blade. For years, Marcus had told her she was nothing but a burden, fragile and weak, incapable of surviving on her own. Now here was a stranger, wealthy, commanding, untouchable in ways Marcus never was, calling her an exception. Her chest tightened, but before she could answer, the sharp trill of a phone echoed through the mansion. Adrian's jaw tightened. He pulled a device from his pocket, glanced at the screen, and then turned it face down on the table without answering. "You should rest," he said quickly. "There's a guest room upstairs. Fresh clothes will be brought to you." But Elena wasn't fooled. She had seen the name flash across the screen in that brief second. Marcus Hale. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Adrian knew him. Adrian was connected to him somehow. The walls that had felt protective now seemed to close in, pressing against her chest. Adrian noticed her fear, his gaze steady on hers. "Whatever you're thinking, it's not what it seems. But you deserve the truth, and I'll give it to you." The words hung between them like a storm waiting to break. For the first time, Elena wondered if she had run from one trap straight into another. Elena followed Adrian up the sweeping staircase, each step echoing like a heartbeat against the mansion's silence. Her damp shoes squeaked faintly on the polished wood, her body tense with every movement. She had seen Marcus's name on Adrian's phone, and though he promised the truth, the weight of that discovery pressed on her chest like an iron hand. The guest room was breathtaking, a sanctuary dressed in soft ivory and gold. Tall windows opened to a view of the sprawling garden where roses climbed the stone walls, and a fire crackled warmly in the hearth as if it had been waiting for her. A change of clothes, neatly folded, lay at the foot of the bed. Adrian closed the door behind them, his presence filling the room. "You saw the name," he said simply. He didn't bother to deny it. "Yes," Elena whispered, her voice fragile but laced with steel. "Marcus called you. What are you to him?" Adrian walked to the fire, staring into the flames, his profile cut sharp by the glow. For a long moment, silence stretched, broken only by the crackle of burning wood. Then he spoke, his voice low. "Marcus Hale was once my business partner. Years ago, before he married you. We invested together in a series of projects, but Marcus is not a man who understands limits. He spent recklessly, borrowed from the wrong people, gambled away fortunes. When the empire began to crumble, he came to me to clean up his mess." Elena's breath caught. "And you did?" "I did," Adrian admitted. But I learned quickly that saving Marcus Hale only meant enabling him. He always wanted more. More money, more power, more control. When I finally severed ties, he swore he'd ruin me. Instead, he found you. Adrian turned then, his gray eyes locking onto hers with a weight that made her knees weaken. I didn't realize until much later how deeply he'd poisoned your life. By then, it was almost too late. The firelight flickered across the room, throwing shadows over Adrian's face, deepening the tension that bound them. Elena's here. Tea pounded. Part of her wanted to run, to escape even this place, but another part, the part that remembered the way Adrian shielded her at the cafe, clung to the possibility that his truth was not another trap. You knew what kind of man he was, she said finally, her voice trembling with a mix of accusation and fear. You knew, and you did nothing. Adrian didn't flinch. You're right, I should have done more. But I underestimated how far Marcus would go. I thought his cruelty was only financial. I didn't see he would turn it personal, that he would destroy you to feed his greed. He stepped closer then, his voice lowering. That's why I can't let him take you back. Whatever he's planning, it ends now. Her throat tightened, tears stinging her eyes. For years, Marcus had convinced her no one would ever believe her, that no one would stand against him. And here was a man not only believing her, but promising to fight. Yet fear twisted inside her. Promises were fragile things. She had trusted before and it had nearly destroyed her. Before she could answer, the phone on Adrian's desk rang again, its shrill cry cutting through the moment. This time Adrian answered, putting it on speaker. Marcus's voice filled the room, slick and venomous. You think you can hide her from me? Marcus sneered. She's mine, Adrian. Broken little Elena doesn't last long without me. You of all people know that. Elena froze, bile rising in her throat at his words. Adrian's expression hardened, his voice sharp with steel. She's not yours, Marcus. She never was. And the next time you send men after her, I'll make sure they don't walk away. Marcus laughed coldly, a sound that slithered into the corners of the room. You think money makes you untouchable? She'll be back. She always comes back. Fragile things don't survive on their own. Adrian ended the call with a slam of his finger. The fire seemed to roar louder, as though echoing his fury. He turned to Elena, his jaw set. He's going to push harder now. He won't stop until he breaks you completely, or until someone breaks him first. Elena felt her knees buckle, the room spinning, but Adrian caught her before she could fall. For the first time in years, she wasn't crumbling alone. She looked up at him through tears, realizing with a clarity that shook her. Marcus had poisoned her life, but Adrian might be the antidote she never believed existed. Night fell heavy over the mansion, the kind of silence that presses against the windows and makes every shadow feel alive. Elena lay awake in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, her mind spinning with Marcus's voice echoing through her memory. Fragile things don't survive on their own. She pressed her hands to her chest as if to push the words out, but they clung to her ribs like poison. Down the hall, Adrian was still awake. She heard the muffled sound of his footsteps, the low murmur of his voice as he made phone calls. He was preparing, though for what, Elena wasn't sure. Part of her wanted to believe he could protect her, that his wealth and confidence were armor strong enough to block Marcus's reach. But another part whispered that Marcus always found a way, and this was only the calm before a storm. That storm came sooner than she expected. The crash of glass shattered the quiet, followed by the shriek of the alarm. Elena bolted upright, her pulse surging. Shouts erupted from downstairs, deep male voices clashing with the pounding of boots. She rushed to the door just as it burst open. Adrian was there, his shirt untucked, a pistol in his hand, his eyes blazing with controlled fury. Stay behind me, he ordered, his voice low but commanding. Elena's body trembled, but she obeyed. Together they hurried down the corridor, the glow of the hallway lights flickering as the mansion's security system locked into place. But the intruders were already inside. She heard them, 3, maybe 4, moving like wolves through the lower floor. They reached the landing, and Adrian motioned her back. From the shadows below, a man's voice rose, smooth, familiar. Marcus? Adrian! His tone dripped with mockery. You always did like rescuing broken birds, but this one belongs to me. Hand her over, and I might let you keep your empire intact." Elena's throat went dry. He was here, the monster who had stolen her years, who had twisted her mind and made her doubt every piece of herself, was standing inside Adrian's home like a king reclaiming property. Adrian's voice rang out, steady as steel. "She's not yours, Marcus. Not tonight, not ever again. Step 1 foot closer and you'll regret it." Laughter floated up from below, cold and careless. Then the sound of movement, the scrape of shoes on marble, the clatter of overturned furniture. Adrian raised his pistol, his body a shield between Elena and the chaos. "Go back to your room, lock the door," he whispered without looking at her. "No," Elena said, her voice trembling but firm. For years, she had obeyed Marcus, allowed fear to silence her. Not anymore. "I won't hide from him. Not again." Their eyes met, and in that moment Adrian saw it. The spark Marcus had tried to extinguish. Elena was still in there, buried beneath the years of control, but burning now with the beginnings of defiance. The next instant, a figure appeared at the bottom of the stairs. Marcus himself, dressed in a dark suit, his hair slicked back, his smile sharp as a blade, his eyes locked on Elena, and the room seemed to tilt. "There you are," he said softly, almost tenderly, though the menace beneath it chilled her. "Did you really think you could run from me? You're nothing without me, Elena. Nothing." Something inside her cracked then, not from fear, but from fury. She stepped from behind Adrian, her hands trembling but her voice stronger than she expected. "You're wrong," she said. "I'm nothing with you." Marcus's smile faltered, just for a second, before twisting into something uglier. He lunged forward, but Adrian moved faster, firing a shot into the floor at Marcus's feet. The sound exploded through the mansion, sharp and final. "Try that again," Adrian growled, "and it won't be the floor I aim for." The intruders behind Marcus hesitated, their confidence shaken. The alarm still wailed, and distant sirens began to answer in the night. Marcus's plan was crumbling, and he knew it. His eyes narrowed, his voice low and venomous. "This isn't over," he hissed. "She'll come back to me, she always does." And then, with a sharp command, he and his men vanished into the night as quickly as they had come, leaving shattered glass and silence in their wake. Elena collapsed against the wall, her breath ragged, her body shaking. Adrian lowered his pistol, his hands steady as he guided her back toward safety. "You stood up to him," he said softly, his gaze fixed on her. "That was the first time, wasn't it?" Elena nodded, tears streaking down her cheeks. "The first time I didn't feel like his prisoner." Adrian brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch unexpectedly gentle. "Then tonight wasn't just survival," he whispered. "It was the beginning of your freedom." The morning after the break-in, the mansion was crawling with police officers and private investigators. Shards of glass crunched beneath boots, cameras flashed as they documented the damage, and voices murmured in clipped tones about how close the intruders had come. Elena sat at the long dining table, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup of tea she barely tasted. The world felt tilted, unreal, as though she were caught in the moment before a storm breaks. Adrian moved through the chaos with controlled authority, his voice steady as he gave statements, instructed his staff, and dealt with the officers. Every so often, his eyes flicked toward Elena, reassuring her without words. But even his calm couldn't silence the dread coiling in her chest. Marcus had looked her in the eye last night. He had promised this wasn't over, and Marcus never made promises he didn't intend to keep. By noon, the police were gone, leaving the house eerily quiet again. Adrian finally sat across from her, his gray eyes heavy with thought. "He's shifting the game," he said. "Last night was a warning. He wants to scare you back under his control. When intimidation fails, Marcus looks for another weapon." "What weapon?" Elena asked, though part of her already knew. "Reputation, legality, lies." Adrian slid a folder across the table. Inside were copies of documents Marcus had filed just hours earlier. power of attorney transfers, medical claims, and worst of all, psychiatric evaluations signed by a doctor Elena had never met. The words leapt from the page like daggers: unstable, delusional, unfit. Her blood ran cold. He's trying to have me committed. Adrian nodded grimly. This is how he wins when brute force doesn't work. He paints you as unstable until the courts believe it. Once you're locked away, he controls everything. Your name, your inheritance, your freedom. Elena pressed a hand to her mouth, nausea rising. He's done this before, she whispered. The pills, the lies, the way he made me doubt myself. He was preparing me for this moment all along. Adrian leaned forward, his voice dropping. But this time he's not the only one with evidence. He pulled out a flash drive and slid it toward her. Security cameras caught everything last night. His face, his voice, his threats. We'll fight him with his own arrogance. Her hands trembled about as she touched the drive. For so long, Marcus had convinced her she had no proof, no power, only his word against her silence. Now, for the first time, the scales were tipping, but fear still gnawed at her. What if the court listens to him? What if no one believes me? Adrian's gaze softened, but his voice held steel. Then they'll believe me. I've seen what he's done. I'll testify. I'll put my entire reputation on the line if I have to. You're not alone in this fight anymore, Elena. A sudden knock rattled the front door, sharp and insistent. Adrian motioned for her to stay put as he went to answer. A man in a dark suit stood in the doorway, flanked by two assistants holding thick binders. Elena Hale, the man called out. His voice carried official weight. You've been served. Court hearing scheduled for 1 week. The binders dropped onto the table with a thud that echoed like a gavel. Elena stared at the mountain of accusations spilling across the polished wood. Marcus's story, crafted to perfection, designed to erase her. Her heart raced as she realized this battle would not be fought in shadows or locked rooms, but in the open, where every lie Marcus spun could strip her bare. Adrian gathered the papers, his jaw set. Then we'll fight him there, he said. His hand brushed hers, grounding her. And this time, Elena, you won't be the victim. You'll be the one who exposes him. She looked at him, her fear clashing with the flicker of hope in his eyes, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a world where Marcus Hale lost. But even as that thought took root, she knew it came with a cost. To beat Marcus in court, she would have to reveal every scar he had carved into her life, every secret she had tried to bury. And Marcus would not go quietly. He would twist the truth until even she doubted it. The courthouse loomed over Elena like a cathedral of judgment, its marble pillars casting long shadows across the steps. She walked between them with Adrian at her side, his presence steadying her, though her pulse thudded so loudly in her ears it drowned out the noise of reporters shouting questions. Cameras flashed, microphones shoved forward, and through it all she kept her chin high. She had promised herself that Marcus would not see her break, not here, not in public. Inside, the courtroom was already filled with curious faces. Wealthy patrons, socialites who had once praised Marcus at charity galas, journalists hungry for scandal. And at the front, sitting with the calm confidence of a man who believed the world bent to his will, was Marcus Hale. He wore a perfectly tailored suit, his smile rehearsed and charming. But when his eyes met Elena's, she saw it, the flicker of venom barely contained behind his mask. The judge called the hearing to order. Marcus's lawyer rose first, laying out his story with the polish of someone who had rehearsed it 100 times. According to him, Elena Hart was a fragile woman whose mental health had been declining for years. He presented documents from Dr. Everett Kane, a psychiatrist Elena had never met, describing episodes of paranoia, hallucinations, instability. He held up photographs of pill bottles, medical records, even letters supposedly written by Elena in fits of delusion. Each word landed like a stone in her stomach. The lies were so complete, so carefully spun, that a murmur rippled through the gallery. She wanted to scream, to deny it all, but Adrian's hand brushed hers beneath the table, grounding her. "Wait," he whispered. "Our turn is coming." When the defense rested, Caldwell, the sharp-eyed attorney Adrian had brought in, rose to his feet. His voice was calm but carried steel. "Your Honor, what my esteemed Eeg fails to mention is that every piece of evidence they've provided originates from one source, Dr. Everett Kane, a man who, as of this morning, is under federal investigation for falsifying medical documents in exchange for payment. Gasps cut through the room. Marcus's jaw tightened, though he quickly smoothed it over. Caldwell continued, pacing slowly. We also submit into evidence this recording, captured the night of the attempted break-in at Mr. Blackwood's residence. He gestured to the clerk, who pressed play. The speakers crackled, then Marcus's voice filled the chamber, cold and unmistakable. She belongs to me. Once the papers are finalized, she won't be able to fight back. The world will see her as unstable, and I'll have everything. The courtroom erupted. Reporters scrambled for their pens, people whispered harshly, and for the first time, Marcus's smile faltered. Elena's chest tightened with both fear and triumph. To hear his voice laid bare, his cruelty exposed to strangers, it was terrifying, but it was also liberating. Marcus's lawyer tried to object, but the judge silenced him with a raised hand. The recording will remain in evidence. Proceed. Then came the moment Elena had not expected. Caldwell called a surprise witness. A woman stepped into the room, tall, with sharp cheekbones and steady eyes. Elena's breath caught. She knew that face. State your name for the record, Caldwell said. Dr. Anna Rivers, the woman replied, former colleague of Dr. Kane. Elena's pulse raced. Years ago, Marcus had once mentioned a Dr. Rivers, dismissing her as a meddler who didn't understand his wife's condition. Dr. Rivers' voice was clear. I am here to testify that Elena Hart was never my patient, nor did I diagnose her with any condition. I confronted Dr. Kane when I noticed inconsistencies in his files. He admitted Marcus Hale was paying him to create false reports. I resigned from the practice immediately and kept copies of the originals. She held up a folder. The judge accepted it, flipping through with a furrowed brow. Elena's throat tightened. Proof. Finally, tangible proof that she wasn't imagining it, that Marcus had orchestrated her entire supposed instability. Marcus leaned forward, his mask cracking. You'll regret this, he hissed toward Dr. Rivers, too low for most to hear. But Elena heard, and for the first time, she didn't flinch. The judge leaned back in her chair, her expression unreadable but stern. This case has taken a very serious turn. We will recess for further review of this testimony and evidence. Court will resume tomorrow. The gavel struck. The sound echoed through the chamber like thunder. Elena rose slowly, her legs weak, but her spirit surging with a strength she hadn't felt in years. Marcus tried to catch her eye as she left, but this time she looked straight through him, as if he were nothing but a shadow on the wall. Outside, the crowd roared with questions. Elena stepped into the sunlight, and for the first time, she didn't feel like prey. She felt like someone ready to fight. The night before the hearing resumed, Elena sat by the wide windows of Adrian's mansion, staring out at the city that glittered like 1,000 watchful eyes. The storm outside rattled the glass, but it was nothing compared to the storm twisting inside her. She had proof, a witness, and a chance. Yet Marcus was not a man who surrendered. He would claw, he would bleed, he would drag her name through fire before he allowed her to walk away free. Adrian entered quietly, carrying 2 glasses of wine. He set one by her hand but kept his eyes on her face. You're bracing for him, he said softly. What are you afraid of? That he'll do what he always does, Elena whispered. Twist the truth until everyone sees me as the monster. Her hands trembled. He knows my past better than anyone. Every actness, every mistake, he'll use it all. Adrian knelt before her, steady, unwavering. Then let him. You've already survived worse than anything he can say. Tomorrow when you walk into that courtroom, you'll face him as the woman he never thought you'd become, not broken, not controlled, but free. His words sank deep, but the fear lingered. That night, sleep came in fragments, and with the morning came Marcus's vengeance. The courtroom buzzed with tension when the judge entered. Marcus's lawyer wasted no time. He rose with a smile too sharp to be genuine. "Your Honor, the defense would like to submit new evidence, documents and testimony that cast serious doubt on Ms. Hart's credibility." A folder was passed to the judge. Pages flipped. Murmurs spread. Caldwell leaned forward, his face tightening. The lawyer turned to the jury. "What my learned colleague has failed to tell you is that Ms. Hart herself has a history of deception. When she was 19, she was briefly detained for theft in Boston. Jewelry belonging to a family friend mysteriously disappeared and was later found in her possession. Charges were dropped, but the stain remains. This is not the first time Ms. Hart has been accused of dishonesty." Elena's heart lurched. She remembered it all too well, the party, the accusations, the way Marcus had consoled her afterward, whispering that he believed her even as he tucked away the incident like a weapon for the future. The lawyer's voice dripped with poison. "Furthermore, we have testimony from acquaintances who describe Ms. Hart as erratic, prone to outbursts, and deeply dependent on medication. Are we truly to believe that this fragile, unstable woman is capable of building the elaborate conspiracy she claims? Or is it more likely she is projecting her delusions onto an innocent man?" All eyes turned to her. The old fear rose, choking her. Marcus sat smugly, one hand folded over the other, his expression calm, controlled, victorious. But then Caldwell stood, his voice cut through the courtroom like a blade. "Yes, there was an incident when Elena Hart was 19. But what my esteemed opponent neglects to mention is that the family friend who accused her of theft was none other than Marcus Hale's business associate. And the jewelry?" He lifted a photograph, grainy but clear enough. "Pawned the very next day by Marcus Hale himself." Gasps rippled through the gallery. Marcus's lawyer paled, but Caldwell wasn't finished. "As for the supposed acquaintances who describe her as unstable, let us ask who paid them, who put money in their accounts days before their statements were taken. We have the transfers here, from Marcus Hale's private accounts." The judge's gavel struck for silence, but the damage was done. The gallery was buzzing, the jury leaning forward, every eye fixed on Marcus. Marcus's mask cracked then, just for a moment. His lips pulled back in something too sharp to be a smile. He leaned toward Elena, his voice low enough that only she and Adrian heard. "You think this is enough to destroy me? I haven't even begun." Elena met his gaze, and for the first time she did not look away. Her voice was calm, steady, even as her hands clenched. "Then begin, because I'm ready now, and I won't run from you again." The judge adjourned for the day, but the battle lines had shifted. Marcus still had weapons to use, but Elena felt something new surging through her veins. No longer dread, no longer numbness. It was fire. The final day of the trial began with a silence that felt heavier than words. The courtroom was full, every seat occupied, the air charged with a kind of anticipation that made Elena's skin prickle. She sat straighter than she ever had before, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, while Adrian stood a step behind her, a quiet pillar of strength. Marcus was already there, sharp in, his dark suit, his silver cufflinks gleaming under the lights. He looked less like a husband on trial, and more like a king daring the world to dethrone him. When the judge entered, the room rose. Then Marcus's lawyer made his final play. His voice carried smooth confidence as he paced before the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, what we have here is not a criminal mastermind. What we have is a broken marriage. A young woman consumed by grief who has mistaken her pain for conspiracy. My client, Marcus Hale, has been vilified by the one person he has loved and cared for above all else. Look at the evidence again. What you'll see is not crime, but the tragedy of a wife inventing demons where none exist." The words were designed to sway hearts, and for a moment, Elena felt the weight of their dangerous simplicity. But then Caldwell rose, slow and deliberate. His voice was a steady strike of thunder. "What you've just heard is a fairy tale, one crafted by a man who has spent his life building illusions. Marcus Hale has worn masks for so long that even he has forgotten where the mask ends and the man begins. But masks crack under pressure, and today they will shatter completely." Caldwell motioned to the bailiff. A large monitor was wheeled forward, the lights dimmed slightly, and the courtroom hushed. "This," Caldwell said, was recovered from Mr. Hale's private computer, thanks to forensic specialists who traced the files Marcus thought he erased. The screen flickered, and then the recording began. Marcus's voice filled the room, calm and cold. She won't see it coming. The pills keep her quiet, the papers make her incompetent, and when the time is right, no one will question a suicide. The inheritance will be clean, uncontested. She was useful, but she'll be more valuable gone. A collective gasp swept through the room. Elena felt her chest tighten, her pulse racing. As the jury leaned forward, eyes wide, the recording continued, Marcus laying out every detail of his plan, every manipulation, every step of the slow strangulation of her life. When it ended, silence fell like a guillotine. Marcus surged to his feet, his mask cracking wide open, fury etched into every line of his face. That recording is fake. She planted it, do you hear me? She's the liar. She's the manipulator. His voice rose, ragged, desperate. She was nothing before me, nothing, and I made her into someone. Without me, she'd be lost, a useless little girl drowning in her own weakness. The courtroom erupted. The jury flinched at his outburst. Reporters scribbled furiously, and even the judge's gavel couldn't quiet the storm at first. But in the chaos, Elena stood. Her voice rose above his like steel drawn from its sheath. No, Marcus, without you, I was already someone. You tried to erase me, but you couldn't. You poisoned me, but I healed. You tried to silence me, but I'm speaking now. You didn't make me. You almost destroyed me, and today, everyone sees you for what you are. The jury stared at Marcus now, no longer seeing a victim of slander, but a predator who had finally revealed his teeth. His lawyer tried to calm him, but it was useless. The mask was gone, the performance over. The judge's voice cut through the noise. Order! Order! The gavel struck. Her gaze swept the courtroom, unyielding. I have seen enough. The jury will deliberate, but the weight of this evidence is undeniable. Mr. Hale, you have revealed yourself more clearly than any witness could have. Hours later, the verdict came swift and unanimous. Guilty on all charges. Fraud, conspiracy, attempted murder. The words echoed through Elena's soul like freedom ringing at last. Marcus was led away in chains, his eyes burning with hatred as they met hers one last time. This isn't over, he spat. But Elena only lifted her chin. Yes, Marcus, it is. When the doors closed behind him, her knees trembled, but Adrian's hand found hers, strong and steady. She turned, to see him watching her with something fierce and proud in his eyes, and in that moment she felt it, the shift from victim to survivor, from caged to free. The courtroom emptied. Reporters rushed to their deadlines, but Elena walked out into the sunlight with Adrian beside her. The world that had once seemed suffocating now felt wide and alive. For the first time in years, she breathed without fear. And though the trial was over, she knew her story was just beginning.